All right. So Christine, the Mecklenburg Audubon Vice President, has put together her usual fabulous slideshow for us tonight. Thank you, Christine. This is just a little promo of what we're going to be talking about in a few minutes, reconciliation ecology, and I'm not going to babble about that because we want our presenter to bring you into that. So we're looking forward to it. Thank you very much.
This is just another reminder. You guys all know this story, but everything's online now. So if you use the code MASNIC, MASNIC, you can get your Birds and Beans coffee with a discount online.
Yep, it's delicious, tasty. Christine, you take this one because I saw the Ross's goose from land. You saw it from sea or lake,
Yeah,
rather.
well, both. Both. So a Ross's goose, which looks similar to a snow goose, very small, more elegant, cute little goose, is a rarity for our area, and it showed up. Some folks had viewed it from a boat on Lake Norman. I saw it there briefly as well. It's been hanging out with some Canada geese, and from the boat we were able to see that it actually had gone up onto the lawn of someone's backyard on the shore. So we were able to note on Google where it was. So after we docked the boat, I got in my car and drove around. And sure enough, there was a homeowner who very pleasantly let us come take a look and take some pictures, because tells me she's been feeding that bird for a few days. It showed up. Really pretty bird. And it was kind of cool to see it with the Canada geese. You really had a better appreciation of how much more delicate it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think did you see it from the country club side, Christine? Because we saw it from Norman Shores, and that brings up a good point. If you are going to go in someone's yard to try to cite a rarity or any bird, really, make sure that you don't just go in, invite yourself. The woman on the Norman Shores side was so nice and cordial and told us not to step in the dog poop on the way back. And then her husband came out with his binoculars onto the deck. So it's just good PR for us if you chat people up and make sure they're okay with you looking in their yard. Okay, that's my public service announcement.
Yeah. All right. So here's some more rarities that we've seen in recent weeks. Patty got this cool shot of a northern harrier hunting at the airport, and Chris Talkington got this photo of long-tailed ducks. Some of you old school birders might know it as an old squaw. That's the name that is no longer politically correct, but long-tailed ducks, I remember these from New York. They're amongst my favorites, but they're pretty rare to get them inland on the lake here. And he got this lucky flight shot.
Nice, I love those.
Okay.
Okay, the bird of the night, the Rufus/Allen's hummingbird. Christine and I were both out there looking at it today, and 3 Baltimore Orioles that were all there. We talked about this a little earlier, but the people on Facebook didn't hear it. They were in one of our member Lucy's yard at her feeders. Okay,
so I have a couple more pictures of that later on. Originally, there's been some sightings. This is a reminder to keep if you can, and if you can keep it warm on these especially cold nights, to keep up your nectar feeders, your hummingbird feeders. This is the time of year where you'll get a rare straggler or some strange vagrant. It's not completely crazy unusual, but we do ask people to note and let us know when this happens. There are some people in our club that have been monitoring when we get winter hummingbirds. So Carol Outwater, I believe she's on the talk tonight. Thank you, Carol, for sending me the picture. This is one that she's had in her yard for a few days now, I believe. And this is the sighting that she entered into eBird. And then it was just a couple days later when Lucy and Len reported theirs along with that Baltimore Oriole. So Judy got that great shot on Thanksgiving when she happened to be over there. And since then, Lucy's let a bunch of us back there as well. I've had anywhere from 2 to 6 siskins in my yard for the past couple of weeks. I've been really fortunate in that they're staying in low numbers, so I'm not getting eaten out of house and home. But I did notice at Lucy's today too that she had a ton of those in her yard. So I'm sure their bird seed budget has exploded with the siskin population. But this one posed up real nice for me on my feeder last week. So that's a shot that we have there. So today when I went to Lucy's house.
Lucy's Lovelies, I like that.
Lucy's Lovelies. Boy, her yard was full of some great stuff. So not only did she have the one, yeah, she didn't have the young one, you know, the one that Judy cited on Thanksgiving. Now she's got 3. This is a photo of the same bird, but I just thought it was a cute series. It landed on the hummingbird feeder while we were waiting for that to show. And he was trying to figure out how to get to that sugar water. So it was a nice pose.
Beautiful. Ooh.
Yeah. You want to take this, Malia? These are Martina's shots.
They're gorgeous. Or Martina, well, she's probably muted. Again, we talked about this earlier in the chat on Zoom, but for people on Facebook, there's a debate about whether this is a Rufus hummingbird or an Allen's hummingbird, and the distinction is very, very elusive. So that's all I know to say.
Yeah, we're trying to get a particular shot of a notch in a tail feather on this tiny bird. That's sort of the differentiating factor. And it's on this tiny, tiny bird. So it's not easy to find. It's unlikely. It doesn't seem like it. It looks like it's probably a female Rufus, but we are keeping an eye on it just in case. So until we can get absolute final jurisdiction and facts on that girl. But she's a beautiful little bird.
Mm-hmm. All right, coming up next meeting, we'll get on to our current meeting here in a second, but one of our Mass grant recipients, Hannah Partridge, did research on turkey vultures, and she's going to talk to us about that next time. And the other thing is that, well, we'll get into that at the end, but that should be a very interesting presentation. I've seen a video she did during it where you know, I don't know if it was night vision camera or whatever, but you see all kinds of critters coming in where these turkeys have had their turkey vultures have had their nests, and it's just fascinating. It's like you're a fly on the wall and observing this turkey vulture family. So it's really cool. So we'll do that on January 7th, and we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end.
Yeah, I thought that was a really neat video. I watched a series of her highlights as well. It was pretty cool. You guys are going to enjoy that one.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay, well, if everybody's ready, we're going to launch the main show. And before I get on to calling on our field trip coordinator, Steve, we have a surprise guest, Martina, and she is doing a program next Thursday night at 6:45. So can you unmute Martina, or Martina unmute yourself, and she'll tell us about that. It's a special, I guess you call it a webinar. Are you there, Martina?
Yeah, so I've got a presentation made up for winter finches next Thursday. I figured it would be a fun little bonus presentation. As many of you have probably noticed on eBird, on Facebook, and other places, this is a really big finch winter, and I'm sure many of you have experienced at your feeders with purple finches and pine siskins. So this is going to be like a little primer on how to identify these finches, how to detect them, and how to attract them into your yard, hopefully, especially now as winter's coming on. Hopefully more should be coming in. So, you know, if you want to figure out how to attract an evening grosbeak to your yard, feel free to stop by next Thursday. It's not a real meeting or anything. It'll be really casual. You know, if you have any questions, just feel free to pop in and ask. So,
Okay.
yeah, that'll be
And you'll like you do for the monthly meeting, you'll receive a link. Judy will send a link out for you to join Martina's special presentation. Still to be done with a pithy title, I'm sure. But anyway, we appreciate it, Martina. It's hard to believe for me that somebody as young as she is has so much knowledge crammed in her head. So,
Thank you, Malia.
she's amazing. She's amazing. All right, great. We look forward to that. Thank you, Martina. And next, I will call on Steve Coggins. Tell us what kind of field trips we've got coming up, Steve.
Well, we've been running trips, and Christine, do we have a little PowerPoint for this?
Just a moment and I will try to get that up.
There it comes. Okay.
We've managed to run trips all this fall, and the key thing about that is safety. And we have a lot of rules we've adopted, including limit the number of people, the participants register, socially distant masks. We usually have a wait list for these because they've all filled up, because we're having smaller groups now, and the people that lead it are really enjoying the smaller groups. So that's worked out well. And we've tried to add a few trips too to serve the needs of folks. And for the month of December into January, we have a lot of things going on. This weekend at Clark's Creek, next middle week at Toby Creek Greenway, then the following weekend, Seven Oaks Trail, and then we go on to December. And besides these, there are also some Christmas bird counts going on, but those are being limited too. And we have schedules off into January, including the middle of January, the winter trip to Huntington Beach State Park. So those are some of the opportunities people have to get outside.
And you can check those at mecbirds.org. That's where we have our calendar and our schedule. So if you need to go back and look at those, and do not forget to register with the leader. That's number one in COVID times, really anytime. But all right, thank you so much, Steve. Let's jump into it. I am going to call on another of our board members, Chris Bowling, to introduce our special guest tonight. Chris.
Okay, thank you so much, Malia. So Dr. Carrie DeJaco earned her bachelor's and master's degree in biology at the University of Louisville, studying algae and temperate and tropical ecosystems. She earned her PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, studying plant and animal interactions in grasslands. From 2006 to 2017, she was a biology professor at Queen's University in Charlotte. And since 2017, she has been a professor of biology and environmental sciences at Pfeiffer University in Misenheimer, North Carolina, where she teaches courses such as field botany, conservation biology, animal behavior, and reconciliation ecology. Carrie is here tonight on behalf of the North Carolina Plant Conservation Program and Friends of Plant Conservation. The North Carolina Plant Conservation Program is a state program to conserve native plant species of North Carolina in their natural habitats now and for future generations. To accomplish this mission, they develop regulations, voluntary programs, and cooperative partnerships to help protect imperiled species in their habitats. They employ a host of methods to conserve North Carolina's endangered and threatened plant species, including the acquisition and management of important plant sites and habitats for permanent protection of sensitive species. The group Friends of Plant Conservation is a volunteer organization that serves to support the efforts of the North Carolina Plant Conservation Program in protecting and conserving threatened and endangered plants and the habitats in which they live. You can learn more about the Friends of Plant Conservation at ncplantfriends.org. And I'm going to hand this over to Carrie now.
Hi, Chris. Thank you guys, everyone, for inviting me to give a talk to you today. I'm very excited about this. I'm always excited for the opportunity to share any of my interests with people. I get super excited when I have the opportunity to share stuff. So yeah, so as Chris said, you guys reached me through the through the Friends of Plant Conservation program. So that program supports the plant conservation program for the state. And I have noticed that the Audubon Society, along with lots of groups lately, have been getting more and more interested and involved in planting native plants. And the plant conservation program is really, that's what they do. They are trying to preserve native plants. They're trying to preserve habitat for native plants, which then provides habitat for all of the organisms within those habitats. So let's see here. For some reason, we're not forwarding. There we go. Okay. So this is just a little flyer for the Friends of Plants Conservation. So if you are interested in learning more about them, or perhaps interested in joining the group, you can go to ncplantfriends.org. And you can learn about the group. We're always eager for more interested people to join the group. We have field trips and volunteer opportunities, and it's just a bunch of really, really good people. So I know you guys are the bird people, but in order to have birds, you have to have native plants. So good to start at the bottom, and then we can protect everything all the way up. So the topic for today is reconciliation ecology, and a lot of people don't know what reconciliation ecology is. So this concept was first put forth by Michael Rosenzweig in this book that he published in 2003. So the idea here is that reconciliation ecology is the redesign of human habitats for accommodation of other species. So I'm going to kind of introduce why we need to do this, why we need to spend some time on this. And it is a very broad subject. So I taught a whole semester's course on this last year, so I could talk for hours and hours literally about this, but I've trimmed down stuff so that I'm just going to kind of give you little tastes of a few different things. And if anything seems extremely exciting to anyone, I'd be happy to give a talk to this group or any other group at a later date to expand on any of these things. I'm going to move my chat box down here so I can keep an eye on that. I will try to keep an eye on the chat box, but sometimes I forget. So, all right, let's see here. Let me put that on everyone. Okay, so in general, there are 3 conservation practices that help us support biodiversity. So those include preserving species, restoring habitats, and reconciling those habitats. So this map here, this is a figure from the Mecklenburg County Land Use and Environmental Services program through the county. And these maps are showing you the land use changes in Mecklenburg County from 1992 to 2001. So the purple color here is the urban area. This is the developed area. And you can see how dramatically this has shifted over the years. So most of Mecklenburg County now is urban area. Slide, please. Not forwarding. Let's see. There we go. Okay. So I just encountered the other day, actually, while I was putting together my last thoughts on this presentation, the 4th National Climate Assessment Report. So this has just recently been made public on the federal web pages. This was really a very fascinating document. I always find these things interesting, but in particular, they have some information in chapter 5 on land cover that give you some interesting information about the land cover composition in the United States. So in this graph here, this is for the entire southeastern portion of the United States. And this graph for the Southeast is divided up into all these different land cover areas. And looking at this graph, it makes us believe that a great proportion of our habitat here in the Southeast is forest, but it takes a little bit of digging. You have to scroll down the page a little bit more, and then you can sort that a little further. And we see that in actuality, the vast majority of the forests that are present here in the Southeast are categorized as production areas. So this is because we have so many tree farms in the Southeast. So all of these tree farms are considered forested land, but of course, functionally, they don't act like forested land. Most of these areas are planted with only one species of tree. And then after 30 to 40 years, all of those trees are harvested. So they're on a very short cycle. We don't end up with any mature forests or even really any middle-aged forests. So, so that is a bit misleading. Whoops. And then the green area down here, this is the area that is conserved area. So we actually have a very, very small percentage of land. It's something like 2 to 3% of land area in the Southeast that is actually conserved. So most of our land is either built up or it is in early successional, very young forest areas that are planning to be logged. So when we have areas that are going to be logged, even if we have more mature forest areas where people do what they call selective logging, many times what they're doing there is removing a lot of the larger trees, removing the diseased trees, removing any dead trees. And there's actually a great deal of wildlife value to those diseased and dying and dead trees. So one of the things that I just want to put forth to you guys as a way that you can practice reconciliation ecology is to preserve in your own yard, if you can, any dead or dying trees, whether they're upright or lying down. If these trees are not going to be causing any harm to any physical structures if they fall, then you can just leave them where they stand and they'll provide homes for all kinds of birds and all kinds of wildlife. After that stump falls, it will continue to produce all kinds of habitat and food for lots of different kinds of animals. One thing that I recently learned is so if you have a tree in your yard that's quite large and you don't really want that whole huge tree to risk falling down, you can just get the upper part of it cut off. But when you do that, you need to make sure that the cut is done at an angle as opposed to a flat top. Recently, I was talking with the guys at Heartwood Tree Service. If you're familiar with them, they're really awesome arborists in the Charlotte area. And they go to a lot of conferences and talk with a lot of other folks. And they have actually learned that snags or dead trees or cut off trees like this that are flat on top are really not used by wildlife to nearly the extent of ones that are cut at an angle. So I just found that fascinating. So if you do want to cut the top off a tree and leave a bit of a pole there for birds and other creatures to use, have that cut off at an angle. So I'll encourage you to do that. So, all right, that's the map I thought I had up earlier. Okay, so now we know that we're developing more and more land. And we know that human populations are growing more and more. And as our human populations are continuing to grow, the majority of that growth is in the urban populations, which leads to our ever expanding our urban centers and our suburban areas. So we see a lot of this land, a lot of our land that is converted from more natural areas is not necessarily being changed into agricultural usage or anything like that. It's simply being developed directly into more areas for humans to live and to do all their shopping and all of that kind of stuff. So this growth in our urban population is greatly reflected in our land cover. So we're seeing a great increase in the amount of land that is being developed. So this is from a paper that was published a couple of years ago with these statistics that I find pretty fascinating. For all of the mammals and all of the wild birds, all of the birds on Earth, the vast majority of these are livestock and humans. So if you're looking at in terms of the biomass of organisms that remain on our planet, just a very small percentage of those are wild birds and wild mammals. So that would be, all of the robins, all of the starlings, all of the cranes, all of the elephants, giraffes, mice, all of those sorts of things are all in just these little tiny shriveled slices of pie here. The vast majority of biomass that is currently on our planet is either humans or animals that we have specifically bred for our own use. So that kind of takes us back here to our 3 conservation practices to support biodiversity. And well, as this human population grows, and we need to feed this human population, there really will be not much land area for us to preserve. To be straightforward and honest, it's entirely likely we will not be increasing the amount of land to be preserved at all. It's also extremely unlikely that we'll be restoring much of the land that has currently been impacted by humans. So if we're not going to be restoring any more land, we're not going to be preserving any more land, that really just leaves that one leg of the stool to support any biodiversity. So reconciliation is really what we're left with. This is really the only way that we can try to preserve as much biodiversity as we can. So losing both of those. Okay, so the whole goal then of reconciliation ecology is how can we alter human dominated environments so that they are more habitable for other species. So we need to spend some time and energy figuring out ways that we can share the space that we have developed with other species. So many of you might be familiar with Doug Tallamy. He is now a famous entomologist who has been spreading the word of reconciliation ecology. He published his book, Bringing Nature Home, I think around 2007. This book has just taken off, and he has been giving talks all over the country, trying to explain to people how our biodiversity is at risk. And the main thing that is driving that is a loss of our base of the food web, which is the plants. So 96% of birds in North America need bugs to feed their babies. We know that a lot of people have bird feeders, and we feed birds, at these artificial feeding stations quite a bit. But most people who feed birds don't feed them bugs. And the birds need those bugs to feed their babies so that their babies will have enough protein to grow. So although many birds are frugivores or granivores, eating fruits and seeds, a lot of the time, even those guys need a lot of bugs to feed their babies. Now, about 37% of all of the animal species on the planet are actually plant-eating insects. So that means we've got a big, big group there who are reliant upon plants. Most of our native insect herbivores don't eat non-native plants. They have special chemical adaptations in their bodies to enable them to withstand the different kinds of protective chemicals that plants produce to try to deter herbivores from eating them. And because of that, that co-evolution of herbivores and plants, the insects simply don't have the biological mechanisms that would be required for them to be able to digest non-native plant tissue. So if we need bugs to feed the birds, and a lot of those bugs are eating plants, and these bugs cannot eat non-native plants, then this means that we need to dramatically increase the availability of native plants across our landscape so that we can provide food for the bugs, which can then provide food for the birds, and so on. So even the animals that don't eat plants eat animals that eat plants, or they eat animals who eat plants. So really, it all starts with the plants. It all goes back to the plants. And if our very first level of herbivores cannot digest non-native plants, then it's imperative that even in places where we clear the land, put in housing developments, shopping developments, whatever, when we come back in to landscape those areas, we really need to focus on bringing in native plants to use in landscaping, as opposed to using things like Chinese hollies and Asian azaleas and liriope and miscanthus grass. All of these sorts of non-native plants that we use so abundantly in our landscaping might as well be plastic as far as the food web's concerned. So to help feed the food web, use native plants in landscaping, not exotics. I thought you guys would appreciate these pictures of these beautiful birds here to encourage you to choose the ones over here, the ones in green, all of our native guys, as opposed to these other ones that grackle is insisting that you stay away from. That is a grackle, I believe, right? Okay, so another thing I want to mention to you guys is many, many millions of animals are killed each year by our use of pesticides. So we spray pesticides abundantly around our houses, around our yards, basically every place. We just love to spray these things. And this is killing not only our target animals, things like spiders and cockroaches and mosquitoes and such, it's also killing the good guys. So just for kicks, I did a search for mosquito pesticides and found one guy's list of the top 7 best mosquito yard sprays in 2020. So I thought, okay, let's investigate this a little further. So this is his #1 mosquito yard spray, Spectricide triazicide. So all right, let's take a look at that. This type of pesticide is listed on the label to kill more than 260 different pest insects, like mosquitoes and fleas and crane flies, which actually eat mosquitoes. It kills ants, it kills beetles, it kills grubs, which are actually baby beetles. And this stuff is, it claims to remain active, continuing to kill insects in the area where it's sprayed for as long as 8 weeks. So this stuff really sticks around. Okay, so it might be killing the mosquitoes and fleas in your yard, but it's also going to be killing the butterflies. It's going to be killing the fireflies, the lacewings, the mantises, all of the insects that we commonly get excited about seeing, not just the ones that we hate. So one really important thing for us to consider in trying to make our landscape more habitable by other species, by non-human species, is that we need to realize that when we're using things like insecticides, we are not using chemicals that are specific to the one kind of organism we're trying to kill. So if you call the mosquito patrol people because you have a lot of mosquitoes in your yard, they're going to come spray around in your bushes where all kinds of good bugs live. And they're going to be killing the mosquitoes, but they're going to be killing everything else as well. So that will deplete the amount of bugs there that would have been food for birds and frogs and lizards and all of those guys. So looking at this one chemical a little further, I pulled up the chemical page for this, and it's toxic if swallowed, it's harmful in contact with skin, it's fatal if inhaled, very toxic to aquatic life with long-lasting effects. is this really something that we want to be spraying on our yard? If it's going to hang out there in your yard for up to 8 weeks, if you're the kind of person that actually likes to hang out in the yard, then you're going to be exposing yourself to this kind of chemical for up to 8 weeks. You're going to be exposing your dog, your cat, your kids, all to this very toxic chemical for up to 8 weeks. So this is something that we need to keep in mind here. And then some people, the whole mosquito, getting rid of mosquitoes is always a big thing. And this goes back for hundreds of years. People used to try to get rid of mosquitoes because of the threat of malaria. We no longer have the threat of malaria here. We do not have the species of mosquito that transmits it. So that's not really an issue. But the thing that people will next bring up is West Nile virus. West Nile virus is a virus that is transmitted by mosquitoes. We do have species of mosquito here that would transmit West Nile virus. But West Nile virus, the incidence of this in our state is about 1 case per million people every year. So among people who get West Nile virus, most people don't have any symptoms of it. 1 in 5 people will develop a fever, head and body aches, fatigue, and around 1 in 150 people infected will develop severe symptoms, severe enough that they may have even some swelling of the brain, need to be hospitalized. And this is actually only around 2 cases per year in the entire United States. So there are an awful lot of people who will say that they're spraying for mosquitoes to prevent the spread of things like West Nile virus. But when it comes right down to it, the threat of West Nile virus is minuscule compared to the threats that our spraying these insecticides have on our environment. And of course, we can see quite clearly these days, what people are willing to do in order to protect themselves from a disease that may or may not have any symptoms. We won't get into that, but for this, the threat of West Nile virus to potentially affect 2 people in the United States severely each year does not seem to be rationale for the mass spraying of insecticides that many cities and counties have been doing in recent years. So I ask you to please consider a bug's life and all of the benefits that those bugs can actually bring. So in addition to providing food, all of those bugs, how else can we reconcile with Mother Nature? How else can we help nature and help other organisms be better able to exist with humans in the areas that we have developed? So we need to think about factors other than simply food that may affect survival and reproductive success of wildlife. So if I show a picture like this looks like a very beautiful tree sheltered road. But when I look at this, I see that that road itself is a hazard to wildlife. This road means that there's going to be air pollution from the vehicles driving down it. There will be pollutants landing on the road from everything from the exhaust particulate matter to little tiny pieces of brake pads and tires and mufflers and all that sort of stuff that will land on the road, eventually wash off of the road, down off the sides into the ditches where it will become water pollution. I see a street light up here, which indicates light pollution. I know that if there are cars around, there's likely to be a good deal of noise pollution. And many of these things are things that are less often considered by people when they're thinking about providing for wildlife in human-dominated habitats. So this map is fairly old. This is from 2003. But even in 2003, 83% of all the land in the United States was within 1 kilometer of a road. And we can see most of the state of North Carolina is green, which means that 60 to 80% of the time in North Carolina, you'll be within 382 meters of a road. 382 meters of a road is really not all that long. Anybody remember in grade school or high school doing the 100-meter dash? It's really not all that long, right? So lots and lots of miles of roads. We have more than 4 million miles of roads within the United States. This is another map looking at this, and this shows us that all of central North Carolina here, in most of these places, the average distance to the nearest road, even in the more rural areas, is less than half a mile. So for most of our organisms who are living in these areas in the eastern half of the country, having to cross roads can really be a significant factor in their mortality. So I just put this picture in here so that we could admire the fragmentation of the habitats that we see. So we've got all of these large roads cutting through, lots and lots of teeny tiny roads in between all of them. We've got little patches of habitat every here and there. So if you try to imagine the animals that are living in this little habitat patch here, they're going to have to cross quite a few roads just to get from this habitat patch to this one. And then what if they need to get to this habitat patch over here? They have to cross this entire shopping center to get there. So in many parts around the world, people are becoming more attuned to the needs of animals to be able to get from one area to another without having to cross our roads. We have tons of mortality of all different kinds of animals simply being smashed on roads. This year in particular, so I drive 20 miles from my house in Kannapolis out to work in Meisenheimer, 20 miles each way every day. And this fall, I noticed that there were a lot of caterpillars crossing the road. And I just never noticed a lot of caterpillars crossing the road before. Luckily for me, there's not a lot of traffic on the roads that I'm going on. So I'm going down the road kind of swerving around, trying to avoid smashing all the caterpillars. We typically don't think of caterpillars crossing roads. We think of things more like deer. And yeah, deer do need to be able to get from one side of the road to another, but smaller populations do as well. We need to keep in consideration that it's important for all of these fragmented habitats to maintain some sort of connection between them, so that each of these small isolated populations doesn't have too large of a problem with genetic bottleneck that prevents gene flow and variability. Especially now that we're seeing a lot of relatively rapid climate changes, it's very important that we maintain as much genetic variability and connectivity in our wildlife populations as possible to give them the best possible chance at trying to adapt to the changing conditions. So I found some pictures of some pretty interesting wildlife crossings. So down here in the lower left, this is a special tunnel that was built in Massachusetts for the migration of salamanders each year because they were having issues with lots of salamanders being smushed on the roads. So salamanders lay their eggs in ponds, usually in small ponds or ephemeral wetland areas where there aren't any fish. And that's helpful to them because the fish would very happily eat their babies. So they try to not lay eggs in larger water bodies where there would be fish. But frequently these guys have a hard time getting from their habitat in a wooded area to a place with water where they're willing to lay eggs. So these folks in Massachusetts realized that they needed to help these salamanders in some way to get from point A to point B. And up here in the upper right, this is the last stages of development for a frog tunnel that was put in place, because in this area, the folks were concerned that frogs are hopping across the road a lot at a certain time of year to try to get to the area where they typically breed. So people were smashing frogs right and left. So it doesn't really take much in many instances for us to be able to take that small extra step to be able to conserve these species just in a very small way. We just need a little tunnel underneath the road, and we'll need to keep that tunnel clear so that frogs and salamanders can make it through there to get to their breeding sites. Now these ways for us to help animals get around from place to place actually helps us help plants as well. A lot of animals are really important seed dispersers. And as our climate is changing, it's very important that our plants as well as our animals maintain as much ability to move as possible. And we know that plants can't just get up and start hiking north. They have to do that through the dispersal of their seeds. Individual plants aren't going anywhere, but hopefully their progeny will be able to move further north as their suitable climate does so. So if we can enable more opportunities for organisms like squirrels, raccoons, possums, and so on to be able to get across roads without getting squished, that not only helps the animals, it also helps the plants, because the animals are, in many cases, moving those plants with them. Okay, so frequently along with roads comes light pollution. And I know that the Audubon Society has been active in the past with lights out programs during migration periods for birds. And if you're new to the Audubon Society or new to this conservation effort, this is a program where for the fall and spring migration periods, it's an effort to try to get people who live in high rises in cities and for office buildings and things like that to turn the lights off of their buildings at night so that the birds won't get distracted by those lights. There have been instances of hundreds, if not thousands of birds that can die by simply flying straight into a lit up building at night. But there are many less direct impacts of light pollution on birds and many other wild animals. So we're going to get into those a little bit. So these are all different factors that contribute to what we consider light pollution. So this is a map on the Dark Skies website. So the International Dark Sky Association has these maps that show the degree of light pollution in places all over the world. So the brighter towards the red and white that color is, the more light pollution there is. So you can see by this map here that most of the eastern US is significantly brighter than it would have been in the absence of all of this artificial light. This is the Charlotte area. So the inner Charlotte area is very extreme on this degree of light pollution. As you move away from Charlotte, you start getting into more rural areas, and that light pollution wanes a little bit. So I used to live right here around the border between the white and red sections, and we hardly ever saw any stars in the sky at all. And I started working at Pfeiffer, which is way out here. And the very first semester that I worked out there, I taught a class that was, it went until 9 o'clock at night. And I walked out of the building into the parking lot, and oh my gosh, it was black. It was dark. It had been a long, long time since I had been any place outside as dark as that was. It was really quite shocking, the degree of light pollution to which I had become accustomed. So lots of our light pollution has actually been shifting in recent years. So for me, let's see if I can scoot it. No, it's just going to keep bouncing back. There we go. That's a little better. Actually, I'd like it at the top. I don't know if you guys can see that or not. But moving around the little thing with the people in it so I can see the slides better. So this is obviously some streetlights in a parking lot, and we quite clearly have two different kinds of light bulbs here. So sorry, I've not been good at monitoring the chat at all. Let's see. Yes, lots of good stuff here. Oh gosh, about spraying for bugs. I don't know about a one-slide presentation, but if you'd like to send me an email, I can point you to some good sources and maybe you can put together a one-slide presentation. Actually, in terms of the animals using the wildlife tunnels, they actually work quite well. Data have shown that the animals really do use these tunnels. Many times when you put in one of these wildlife tunnels, you'll also put in fencing along the edges of the road for a ways away from the tunnel or the overpass to try to direct the wildlife to the place that's safe for them to go across. And if you're doing a tunnel for frogs and salamanders and things like that, it's very easy to just put in a very low drift fence sort of thing. And they'll basically just bump into that and just walk along the side of that until they get to the tunnel. So yeah, those things are actually working remarkably well in many, many parts of the world. Oh, excellent. That'll be good. Yeah, I look forward to seeing that on the Wildlife Federation webpage. Good. Okay, sorry, I'll try to do a little better job monitoring that chat box there. Okay, yes, so we've got two different kinds of streetlights here. The one on the left, this orangey one, this is a pressure sodium lamp. We have high pressure and low pressure, but these are the ones that I remember when I was a kid. Anytime you were in a parking lot of a store at night, there are these really yellow orangey bulbs. And if you're looking at anything when you're standing underneath these lights, it just looks really sickly yellow. So that was these low pressure sodium lamps. They pretty much just gave off this yellow shade of light. So everything you see in that light looks yellow. Then there's also a metal halide vapor lamp. And that's the bluish one over here. So this one has quite a bit of blue tint to it that gives it more of a whiter color. So these are the older light bulbs that we used in our outdoor lighting, but now we're replacing them with more energy efficient LEDs. And we tend to prefer, let's see if I can get this here. There we go. The ones that are white. So this lamp here, this has a white LED bulb in it. And you can actually see with the light reflection here, you can see that there are lots of different colors of light that are making that white light. So when we consider light to be white, it's really made up of all of these different kinds of wavelengths. And with these LED bulbs, we can actually very easily make those bulbs any color we want. And so it's simply because people tend to prefer white light that most of the light bulbs that we're making now, LEDs, are these white light bulbs. And we tend to prefer white light because that to us makes everything look like it's more natural color. So, you go walking down the street, you can see the yellow line, you can see the gray. If you had on a blue sweatshirt, it's not going to look some sickly sort of yellow-green color, it's going to look blue. So we tend to really like these white lights but these are not so good for other organisms. I just found this online the other day. This is a paper that was put together in a summer program under the direction of Mike Baranski about a decade ago in a summer science program. So this kid, Chris Herring, put together this report on some experiments that he did looking at the differential attraction of insect orders to different wavelengths of light. And he found that in every order, there was a general trend that the shorter the wavelengths, the more insects there were attracted to it. So our shorter wavelengths are the ones that are over here towards the blue and purple range of things. So in fact, a lot of insects don't even have receptors that enable them to see light down at this red and infrared side of the spectrum. We know that birds see that color certainly, but there are a lot of other animals whose light receptors, their eyes, are much more attuned to these shorter frequencies of light. You remember these bug zappers? So that's got a bluish tinge to it, and that is highly attractive to the bugs. So when we're putting out these white bulbs, replacing those yellowish sodium bulbs, we're switching that color of our night lighting from this area, which was attractive to bugs, but not hugely attractive. We're moving it more in this direction, which is making it more and more attractive to bugs. So has anyone ever done this with a light? You put out a light and a sheet at night, see what kinds of things come to it. Lenny Lampel at the Mecklenburg County Natural Resources has been doing a lot of moth, what do you call this? Moth lighting. I forget what to call this, but they've had a lot of programs looking at moth diversity in Mecklenburg County lately, and that's been pretty fascinating. So if you look at literature from entomologists who are studying moths, they tend to actually want to use a ultraviolet light as opposed to a white light, because when we get down here towards that purple end of the spectrum, that is even more attractive to bugs. Okay, I'm pretty sure I saw something up here. Okay, so the energy efficiency argument: can we promote LEDs that are not as attractive and perhaps have lights that are only motion sensitive? Excellent. So yes, we certainly can. So the LED light bulbs are extremely energy efficient, which makes them fantastic. But that white light is causing a lot of problems for wildlife, and I'll tell you about a few more aspects of this here in a few minutes. But as I said, we can make LED bulbs any color we want. We can make them yellow, we can make them green, we can make them red, we can make them purple, we can make them whatever color we want. It's just a matter of trying to get the public on board with having everything look orange at night instead of looking its natural colors. Yeah, as with most things, it comes down to public opinion. Oh, it's 8 p.m. already. Okay. All right. So let's see. So, right, moving on. Let's see. Okay. So, so some of the disruptive effects of night lighting on wildlife that we frequently don't consider. So not obvious things like them flying into buildings and dying, but for birds and reptiles, for example, if there is a lot of night lighting, these guys are more active. So they don't really see it getting to be dark like it typically would. So animals that are typically active during the day tend to extend their activity period, which means that they're actually spending less time sleeping. They're spending more time foraging for food, which is good, but they're also spending more time defending their territories against invaders. They're spending more time trying to defend their nests from potential predators. They're spending more time defending their mates. They're using up a lot more energy than they would. And that time to sleep, even for organisms like birds and reptiles, is a really good time for the brain to kind of reset and process the day. You know, they need sleep just like we do. And having this light pollution interrupts that. For some organisms who are more nocturnal, like frogs, salamanders, owls, in areas where there is light pollution, these guys tend to actually spend less time foraging. It doesn't get as dark as their ancestors had known that to be. Therefore, they don't wake up and become active as early in the evening as they otherwise would. These guys frequently have problems hunting because they are more visible to the guys that they are hunting. They also become themselves more obvious to predators because there is more light out there than they should be. Many frogs have been found to not go out looking for mates, and they don't call as much to attract mates if there is light pollution. So all of our attempts to create light for ourselves so that we can see better is causing a lot of problems with these wildlife. It may not be killing them outright, but it is having an effect on their metabolism. It's having an effect on their ability to find adequate food. It's having an ability having an effect on their ability to be able to provide for their offspring and all of these sorts of things. So these all pile up. So as we see problems with various kinds of wildlife declining over the years, we can consider light pollution to be one aspect of many things that are adding up to have negative effects on wildlife. One experiment actually showed that amphibians that were kept under constant light had reduced levels of melatonin production. So the melatonin in these organisms is very important for their production of the thyroid hormones, and that is related to their process of metamorphosis, the development of their sexual structures, their reproductive behavior, all sorts of things. So we think about melatonin as being something that primarily drives our own circadian rhythms and wake-sleep cycles, but other organisms have the same sorts of chemicals in their bodies that we do. And we're learning actually that these things have very significant effects on these other organisms. So there are various things we can do. We can try to keep our light spectrum down towards the orangish reddish side of things, make every place a red light district. But we can also do things like just prevent the amount of wasteful light that we're producing. So if we have a street light that's just lighting up the entire area, we're producing a lot of sky glow, which is going to be reflecting off of lots of surfaces and increasing that light pollution problem. But it's also quite wasteful to us in terms of energy efficiency. So a lot of the energy that's going into producing this light isn't even useful to us. When we try to light things up, we're not doing that because we're worried about dangers coming at us from above, right? Really, we just want to light up the ground so that we're not tripping over things and make sure we're not running into anyone or anything that's in front of us. So, we can get lamps that do more of the better, best sort of lighting as opposed to ones that are really quite wasteful in the amount of light that they're producing. Let's see, whoops. Okay, so this is a screenshot from a webpage for the International Dark Sky Association. They had announced criteria for community-friendly outdoor sports lighting. So I thought this was awesome because we certainly do have and use a lot of spaces where we want a very large area to be lit up so that we can see what's going on in that area. But there's really no reason at all for us to have to light up the entire sky around it and be able to see that light from miles and miles away. So there is a lot we can do to reduce the amount of light scatter and light reflection that is producing this light pollution. This was a study that came out just a few years ago showing that that bats actually, which tend to be affected by light pollution, seem to not be affected by red light. So this was really very promising to show that, if there are areas where we want to have night lighting, if we put up red lights, then that will help reduce the problems with the insects. It will help bats live a more natural life as well. Many people are concerned about crime in areas if we try to decrease the amount of night lighting. And studies have actually shown that having increased lighting at night, while it might make us feel much safer, the statistics don't bear that up. So just a couple of studies to mention here. There was a study done in England and Wales that had various areas where they modified the amount of lighting there over long periods of time and compared them to each other to see what would happen. So they had areas where they had bright night lighting, some areas where they dimmed the lights, some areas where they didn't have any lighting at all, and then some areas they had shorter periods of lighting. And over the long term of this study, they found absolutely no correlation between any of these methods of lighting and the amount of crime or the amount of vehicle collisions. Another study a couple of decades ago in Chicago was looking at how many lights they have in alleyways, and we've got kind of this this idea of dark alleyways being dangerous places, but they actually found that there were increased crimes reported in alleys that had more artificial lighting. So that's pretty fascinating. And I guess if you think about it, if your thief or criminal or whatever has to hold a flashlight while he's trying to break into your house, it's a whole lot more difficult. If you had just lit it up for him, he's going to be able to get in a lot more easily. Okay, so along with light pollution, there is frequently a correlative factor here of noise. And noise pollution is another something that very few people actually consider. So I just want to tell you a little bit about effects that noise has on organisms. So many years ago now, this study came out showing that that birds are affected quite significantly by noise pollution. So there was significantly more singing by birds at night in areas where there was I'm on noise now, where there was significant noise pollution. Now, since noise pollution is typically correlated with things like light pollution and air pollution and a lot of other things, you really have to get creative if you want to try to isolate the effects of noise pollution, and these guys did. And they found that in areas where they had artificial road noise, there were a third fewer birds, and the migrants that were coming through and hanging out there for a few days to try to put on weight for the rest of their migration were substantially lighter. They did some further experiments with some captive birds, and they found that birds that were exposed to the road noise actually spent less time looking for food. They spent more time scanning for danger. I'm gonna try to go through the next few slides relatively quickly here. So basically, we just see these similar sorts of patterns for different kinds of organisms. So prairie dogs, we saw the same thing. When there's simulated traffic noise, we have less time foraging for food. We have more time looking around, looking for the danger. Birds and frogs use vocalizations as a way to try to attract mates. The noise pollution is also affecting the frequencies at which the birds and frogs are calling, and the frequencies that are able to be heard by females. So this has a significant effect on which males are actually able to mate when they're looking for females. So this slide just shows many different aspects of noise stress on our own systems. And our systems are extremely similar to those of many different kinds of animals. So any of these problems that we can imagine occurring in ourselves with increased noise pollution will also happen with various kinds of wildlife. The creatures in zoos are even showing impacts from noise and air pollution, as these guys are they're not mating as they should be. If there is substantial noise pollution, even when they put the males and females together, they refuse to mate with one another. So let's see here. I've got a few more slides to go still. I was aiming for about an hour, but I did not realize that we had so much introductory stuff going on. So I could go on for probably another 15 minutes, but I'm happy to stop right there if we need to wrap up, and we can, well, if anyone has any further questions, I can just talk to them afterwards. What do you guys think about this?
I think we should have some people, if they have questions, you've given us a lot of really good information, and see if there's some others. But yeah, we even at this, you've gone an hour now anyway. So, and I know, being a professor myself, I understand how on Zoom it's very difficult to kind of pace yourself on that. But yeah, we would. Are there any questions? If you have a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself and go ahead and ask them. It says, "Can you give us your contact information? Can you put that in the chat so people can get that?" And that's her contact. Very simple.
Either one of those email addresses I will get. So feel free to contact me either way.
So what would be one thing that you could recommend to us as people who have yards and stuff? What would be the best thing for us to try to start to work with? We've already been working on, native plants and stuff, but what else?
Right. So I would recommend that you try to minimize any extraneous light pollution in your yard and in your neighborhood. So if you notice that there are streetlights in your neighborhood with wasteful light that's just kind of going up all over the place, you can try to talk to whoever's in charge of those sorts of things to make sure that the lighting that you use has covers that is simply directing the light down. Another thing is the noise pollution. So one of the biggest aspects or the biggest causes of noise pollution, which a lot of people right now are really starting to realize as more and more people have been working from home, the noise of leaf blowers is actually quite significant. So there's a big movement now in many cities. Hundreds of cities across the country now have actually begun to put some regulations in place regarding the use of leaf blowers. Apparently, the use of electric leaf blowers is better than the ones that you put the gasoline into. The electric ones are said to be quieter than the gas-powered ones. And the electric ones, of course, also will reduce the amount of air pollution in the area as well. And air pollution goes along with climate change. And this is a big concern, especially to birds, because as many of you may know, birds basically, their breathing system basically takes in twice as much oxygen and other things from the air that our lungs do. Mm-hmm. So with every one breath that the birds take in, they're actually absorbing twice as much in terms of pollutants that mammals do. Wow. So birds are extremely sensitive to air pollution. If we can do anything to reduce the amount of air pollution, then that is certainly beneficial. So Roxanne Newton recommends leaving the leaves. Yes, so that was actually going to be one of the later things in this presentation as well. There's a huge movement right now to leave the leaves in place. And of course, this helps us with the noise pollution and air pollution aspect of leaf blowing. But additionally, a lot of insects actually overwinter in the leaf layer. And of course, those insects are things that will be feeding the birds, right? So lots of bees and wasps and ants and beetles and all of these kinds of guys actually burrow down in the leaf litter, and then just maybe an inch or two below the surface of the soil in the winter, and they'll spend the winter there just under the ground surface. And if we remove all of the leaf litter there, that removes an insulating layer that helps keep them protected over the winter. So it actually is quite important that we try to do our best to leave the leaf litter in place so that those critters can make it through the winter. There are many species that we're learning actually that lay their eggs on dead leaves in the fall. And those bugs will remain in their eggs over the winter. But if we're blowing those leaves around, the pressure of the blowing can literally kill the little guys in those eggs. So just by blowing our leaves into piles and then bagging them up and sending them off to the landfill, that in and of itself is actually significantly reducing our populations of bugs, which are providing food for the birds and the lizards and the frogs and all that kind of things. Let's see. Yeah, stop collecting the leaves. And if you can reduce the frequency of mowing in your yard and let the height of the grass grow a little bit taller, that provides a lot of cover for a lot of birds, a lot of bugs that the birds are going to eat as well. So let's see if cleaning them up in the spring is okay, better. So around here, I have found that most of those leaves will actually break down and decompose by mid-spring. So if you're living in someplace like Wisconsin or New York, there may be significant issues with just leaving your leaves in the winter. It may actually be detrimental for lots of stuff. But around here, it stays warm enough in the winter that there's plenty of biological activity all winter long, and quite a few of those leaves will either just blow away on their own, or they will break down over the course of the winter and early spring. So you may not even have to clean them up in spring. They may take care of themselves by then. Yes, that makes sense. Why slanty snags are better than flat top ones, I have no idea. It would be interesting to do some experiments with that. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't even have any hypotheses on why that would be.
They noticed that you had more slides. They were wondering if somebody was wondering if we could have your presentation, and so that they could see the rest of the slides for that.
Let's see. Do you guys? I use an awful lot of pictures in the slides, which makes the files enormous. So
we can put it up on I'll tell you to send it to a Dropbox.
Yes,
which will be good, and then we'll put it up on our
excellent.
I can make it available.
Okay,
either put it into a PDF,
absolutely,
or whatever. But if you can give me that would be good.
Yeah, sure. I can totally do that. And as you might have noticed, a lot of my slides don't have many words. So if you're clicking through, if you have questions about things and don't know, what I was going to talk about with that slide, you can just send me an email. I'll be happy to talk your ear off about it all night long.
And also, Gretchen had a question earlier. Are there any particularly good plants that you recommend?
Oh my gosh, there are tons of good plants. So it depends on whether your area is sunny or shady, whether it's dry or wet, how good a drainage you have. Some of the best plants that we can provide are things like oaks. Our native black cherry tree is a fantastic host to all kinds of bugs. let's see, lots and lots of native grasses and native asters are fantastic host plants for lots of insects. We have tons of native asters and native grasses that can be used fantastically in landscaping. I'm a huge fan of many, many of those guys. And I actually have some lists of recommended native plant species that I could email you. If you want to send me a note and ask me about that, I can email you some lists with some of my preferred plants for sunny areas and shady areas and various things like that.
If you'd say you can send it to us too, we can put that with the, what I do afterwards is put the other stuff up on the website, so we can do
Okay.
that. Okay.
Excellent. Excellent. Yes.
I would also put in a plug that Carrie does teach one of the in the native plant certification program at UNC Charlotte, and somebody else, Roxanne, recommended that as well.
Yes,
But it's a really good program.
the ecology course
Yes,
for that.
the ecology course for that.
Yeah,
I'm looking at that. I think we've got everything. Malia, do you have anything to say?
Oh, I just want to thank you so much, Carrie, for joining us. I learned so much. I mean, you went through everything from air pollution to noise pollution to stress pollution, which, you know, I'm subject to a lot, but it was really cool the way you brought not only the way that it affects birds and other wildlife, but it affects us. So I think if we could all be more cognizant of all of it, you know, I just learned so much about how we can protect and increase our biodiversity. And it really was an honor to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. You know, it's so true. You know, the things that we could do to make things around us better for wildlife will honestly make it much better for us as well.
Right.
Absolutely.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Okay, well, thank you again. And if you know anyone who could not join us tonight, make sure and tell them that the meeting was recorded, and Judy will put that up and send out links to the recording through our usual communications channels. So you can watch it at your leisure or watch it again. I might watch it again. It was so good. Anyway, and we also hope you will join us here again through Zoom or Facebook Live for our first meeting of a very welcome new year, 2021, on January 7th. We usually have a potluck dinner in January, so heck, feel free to bring your dinner. You know, eat if you like. Tell us what you're having. Tell us how you cooked it. Anything and everything, and we'll be welcoming Hannah Partridge. And as I mentioned, we'll have our annual in-house bird photography showcase. So Judy, you'll give people information about how to get submit their photos to you, correct? Okay, so that'll be coming, and we look forward to seeing all of our wonderful mass photographers. Great work, as always. So anyway, for those of you who joined us on Zoom, you can switch back to gallery view now, stick around and chat with each other some more if you'd like. If you joined on Facebook Live, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you again on January 7th. Thanks again, and good night.